Before that was Fabulous Arabia with Ballad of State Highway 1. It is 11 minutes past 8. Issues of the day now with T. Radar. He's back on the show. He's back from the States. G'day there, T. Radar.
Well, hello, Wammo. It's back slightly more of me than there was before I went away. I think I could solve the world's obesity America's obesity problem and the world's famine issues by simply suggesting to Americans they didn't eat so much food.
Yes. Did you eat a lot of food yourself?
Well, I tried not to, but it was almost unavoidable.
Although it depends,
it's one of those weird things.
It depends on where you go, though, right? There are the fat states versus the skinny states. Where were you?
I was in California, which I thought might have been a skinny state, but certainly San Francisco showed no sort of inclination towards that manner. And then up to sort of glorious Portland and Seattle and New York, and virtually everywhere you went, just the portion size of food was mind-numbing. I took a photo essay of it because I couldn't believe how much food was being served up on these troughs in front of you.
Well,
it's a nation of gluttony.
Gluttony, yeah. Well, interesting times to be in the States, of course, with this whole Occupy Wall Street movement that has spread worldwide, but it all started there in New York. Did you manage to see any of it?
Yes, I joined the throng of tourists who, it's actually become an odd kind of tourist attraction, down to the Occupy Wall Street area down there. It was not a bad day. I think it had been raining the night before, so people were a bit bedraggled, and it's an odd kind of thing, There's a lot of discussion about it. I was on a sort of a tram in San Francisco, and people were debating the whys and the wherefores of it. But I think it's hampered in some ways by, I guess, just not really having a focus. There's kind of an anger and a resentment, but at the same time, there's nowhere to sort of. I guess we live in a world where people want to channel that and go, well, what exactly is it that you're saying? And with winter coming now, I suspect that there'll be a hardcore. Few left there. So it's not kind of like, it's described as being the American Spring as much as the Arab Spring happened, but it's kind of not, because there they had a focus. We want a sort of regime change. We want to have, free and fair elections and all of that, whereas theirs is a more amorphous, hey, it's not fair. And while they're, the things that they're arguing about are actually, pretty much all true. Americans have been absolutely screwed by Wall Street over the last, decade. You can't pin your sort of tail on anything.
Well, you'll need to head down to Occupy Queen Street and compare the two movements. Is there got anything in common?
Well, a lot of beardies, I imagine. There was actually. God bless her, Cactus Kate, who writes the Asian Invasion blog, went down and she's sort of on the far right of being far right, and she went down and offered them some PR advice, which was actually, it makes for quite a funny read. By saying you need more attractive women there to present your message, essentially, and you need to sort of probably not have so many people under the influence of controlled substances, smell of that wafting over the thing, if you want to really get mainstream people on board.
Yeah. Okay, well, actually last night with the leaders' debate, Gough was asked sort of the question about what would he be out there marching for, and at that point he showed some sympathy for that Occupy movement. I can't see him camping out there anytime soon, though.
No, it'd make a great political statement, though, wouldn't it? A bit of freedom camping down there in the Aotea Square.
Yeah.
You could cover a number of bases. And did you see much of the debate last night?
I did. I did catch the whole thing. I felt very stressed. I felt stressed, anxious, angry, and then finally...
sort of a sense of impotence?
A little bit. But then I went through acceptance, and then I had a whiskey, and then I was all right.
It's sort of like a grieving process,
it
really,
was,
isn't it?
Really.
And I've only sort of caught little bits of it. I had some friends around last night. We dressed up in our Halloween costumes, waiting for the kids to turn up to give them candy. And so I didn't really see much of the debate. I've seen bits of the sort of the opening campaign addresses. I watched the ACT one this morning, actually, with a sense of utter bewilderment. It's not a single policy statement, just a list of things that they would like, and the reiteration of the fact that they're patriots, with a long bit in the middle that seemed to be a montage of Don Brash addressing various groups while a man sang a song about patriotism.
Well, yeah, I thought it would be hard to top the Feelers for the National Party as the worst campaign song, but I think ACT really trumped them.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know whether that was especially written for the campaign or whether it was they've pulled it from the archives of classic New Zealand folk songs or not. But it's quite a piece of work.
Indeed. Well, it must be odd coming back to New Zealand, sort of being away for so long and be thrown into all this. But what are your overall impressions just a week into the campaign?
Well, it's odd in a way. You've got these sort of statements. You've got the Labour Party with one of the oddest campaigns I think I've seen in a long time with this. They've gone from, probably the pinnacle of that cult of personality under sort of Helen to this sort of amorphous bland. It's all got the Freudian slip. I said amorphous bland.
Yeah.
Amorphous sort of brand of everybody's with no sort of discernible leader at the top. Now you wonder whether is that because obviously Phil isn't as popular as perhaps he could be. And they don't want to sort of campaign with him being in charge because they may want to get rid of him at some stage to the cult of personality under John, with all of these other sort of minor parties, many of whom it seems in the debates actually have a lot of quite interesting ideas they wish to actually debate. So I think in many ways the winners so far have been the minor parties, and particularly, I think Māori Television had a good debate. The Greens had an interesting one apparently last night on the interwebs. And they're the interesting ones. It's because it's in a way going to be the sort of the coalition parties, I guess, that hold it together. And in a strange sort of lack of anything, I haven't seen Don. I think Don is overseas doing something, addressing some bankers or something, which is an odd time to do that, given the fact that it looks like ACT could lose Epsom.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting contest. But interesting looking at the front page of Stuff this morning. Some of the newspapers are finding it hard to let go of the World Cup, and the top story seems to be about Richie McCaw maybe up for a knighthood. T-Radar.
Outrageous, really, isn't it? You win a game, and I was away. I missed the final. I was on the plane on the way back from the States on that night, and I've been away for 3 weeks, and to arrive back into this kind of orgy of patriotic narcissism was quite astounding. People have been caught up in this, essentially this kind of circus, I think. Always good to have something like that in the midst of what is quite a bad depression. And I really, judging by what's happening overseas, we've certainly not seen the worst of it yet. And, the parades and all of this. So clearly, I missed something. And the debate over to whether or not Richie should receive a knighthood, I mean, it was all well and good that he won and he's a top chap and a wonderful glider pilot who I think does quite a lot. But it's a sort of,
isn't he
employed by National, do you think, to knight Richie in a moment of euphoria?
But isn't he like only 30? He's young.
He's very young.
But he looks about 45 or something, isn't he?
Definitely heaps of
it's funny.
man.
It's funny though. You look at all those rugby players, line them all up, and if I didn't know they played rugby, or I didn't know who they were, I'd be thinking, oh yeah, he's about 40, 41. They all look
life, out there on the field. Maybe they need to knight them now before they become too decrepit, and we actually see the toll that the sport takes on their bodies and brains.
No moisturiser on those boys, hey.
Well, a couple of them. Some of the more metrosexual ones have a little bit. So. But nonetheless, it sort of has been the week of sport. Not only this, but, there's absolutely extraordinary debate about an inquiry into that V8s in Hamilton, where they've seemed to have gone out and spent such an incredible amount of money that the ratepayers in Hamilton, they're on the verge of going broke. And, if you look at the sense of what is the culture of the country, they're now losing the rose gardens. So we've had all this money spent on the rugby around the country and the V8s, and at what cost? The rose gardens in Hamilton.
They've got to go. But is it the upkeep? Is it the pruning that needs to be done every year? Is it too expensive?
Apparently so. It's just been mooted at this idea as a sort of essentially a pruning of the budget by pruning the rose gardens. But
I'll go prune it for them. Just some shares. I'll go through there, and it'd be a 30-minute job, if that.
It's a big rose garden, Wammo, and it needs to be done apparently on quite a regular basis. But as one of the rose breeders said the other day, it's not Hamilton's rose gardens; it's the country's rose gardens. But I think it's a wonderful metaphor for some of the pruning that will happen in the next little while, once the true cost of all of this borrowing and whatnot takes place. And we're not really seeing much of that in the election campaign. There's talk of selling assets, which is, relatively ludicrous in many ways. And I think we're in for lean times.
Apart from the Herald editorial this morning, which suggested that selling assets is a good idea because it makes them more efficient, which, as we know, is code for actually makes it more expensive for consumers.
That's exactly right. And if you look at sort of talk of selling ACC and things like that. Yeah, we've only got to look at it, I guess, the sort of the pipeline. Nice to come back and see the entire country, or at least most of the country, the upper North Island, shut down because, a pipeline ruptured.
Bit strange, eh? That was quite odd.
Madness.
Yeah.
Madness. What's going on? I might have to go away again for a while and come back and hopefully it all gets a little better. But the thing is, you go away and it's actually much, much worse overseas. America, I think, is on the cusp of some very bad times.
Oh, he's happy to be home, Mr. Radar.
Wammo.
Yeah, no, that's all right. All good. Nice to have you back.
And poke a stick into the weeping eye of the tearful, joyful eye of the nation.
Yeah. Back to reality, people.
More positive for next week.
All right. See you then.
All right.